Shots fired at Rihanna's Beverly Hills mansion. Police say the superstar was home but not harmed. Tonight, a suspect is in custody.
A woman drove from Florida to Los Angeles, parked outside Rihanna's home with an AR-15, and opened fire while Rihanna was inside with her children. That's not a rumor. That's what police confirmed happened on the afternoon of March 8, 2026. And once investigators started digging into who this woman was and what she had been posting online for weeks before the shooting, the case became significantly more disturbing than the initial headlines suggested. Here's the full picture. Just after 1:20 p.m. on a Sunday, a white Tesla pulled up across the street from Rihanna's property on Heather Road in the Beverly Crest neighborhood, a secluded hillside area in Los Angeles where celebrities specifically go for privacy. The driver parked the car, aimed toward the front of the house, and fired. Witnesses in the area reported hearing around 10 shots. Several rounds struck the property. Bullet holes appeared in the front gate. Fragments hit parts of the exterior wall. A vehicle parked near the driveway was also damaged. When crime scene investigators arrived, they collected shell casings from the street and documented bullet impacts across multiple sections of the exterior. The trajectory of the shots told detectives exactly where the shooter had been standing and what she had been aiming at. Rihanna was inside the house when the shots were fired. The home is also where she lives with A$AP Rocky and their young children. Whether Rocky was present at the time was not confirmed, but the detail that matters, that a mother and her children were inside while someone fired a rifle at the building, was enough to make this incident land differently from the moment the news broke. The suspect did not wait to see what happened. Witnesses described a white Tesla accelerating away from the cul-de-sac immediately after the shooting, but the response from law enforcement was fast. Given who the target was, the LAPD deployed a helicopter almost immediately. The aircraft located the vehicle heading toward Coldwater Canyon Drive and tracked it from above while patrol units moved in from the ground. There was no dramatic high-speed chase. The Tesla eventually pulled into a parking structure near Sherman Oaks, roughly 8 miles from the property. Officers surrounded the vehicle. The driver was taken into custody without resistance. Inside the car, investigators recovered the weapon used in the attack, an AR-15 style rifle. From the first 911 call to the moment the suspect was in handcuffs, less than an hour had passed. Authorities identified the suspect as Ivana Ortiz. She had reportedly traveled to California from Florida before the shooting. She was booked on suspicion of attempted murder, and bail was set at approximately $10 million, a figure that immediately reflected how seriously prosecutors were treating the case. The case was handed to the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division, the unit that handles the most complex and high-profile criminal investigations in the city. For detectives, the first question was straightforward. Why would someone drive across the country and fire at the home of one of the most recognizable people on the planet? The answer started emerging when investigators looked at her online activity. What they found had been sitting in public view for weeks. Authorities began reviewing social media accounts connected to Ortiz and discovered a long series of videos, posts, and direct accusations aimed at Rihanna. The posts were not vague or ambiguous. In multiple clips, Ortiz spoke directly to the camera and mentioned Rihanna by name. She claimed the two had some kind of ongoing conflict or personal connection, despite the fact that investigators found no evidence the two had ever met or communicated. The content of the videos ranged from emotional accusations to claims that Rihanna had somehow interfered with her life, stolen ideas from her, or was involved in events happening around her. In several clips, she spoke about the singer as if they were engaged in an active personal dispute, describing situations and interactions that appeared to have no basis in reality. Rihanna was not the only name that appeared. Posts also referenced Kim Kardashian and Cardi B. But Rihanna came up repeatedly and with more intensity than anyone else. In one video that later spread across social media after the arrest, Ortiz spoke about the singer in a way that made clear she believed Rihanna was directly affecting her daily life. Viewers who watched the clips after the shooting described them as deeply unsettling. Looking back at the dates on those posts, the pattern was visible long before the shooting ever happened. The fixation had been building for months, playing out publicly online with almost no intervention. That detail, that the warning signs were there and visible, became one of the most discussed aspects of the entire case. When investigators looked past the online activity and into Ortiz's background, what they found made the story more complicated. On paper, Ortiz appeared to be a functioning professional. Records indicated she worked as a licensed speech-language pathologist in Florida, a field that requires years of education, state certification, and ongoing professional practice. Nothing in that professional profile suggested someone who would eventually travel across the country armed with a rifle. But court records from Florida told a different story. Documents showed that Ortiz had been involved in several legal incidents in the years before the shooting. Some of those cases involved domestic disputes and accusations of violent behavior during personal conflicts. In one reported situation tied to a divorce dispute, police described a physical confrontation in which Ortiz was identified as the primary aggressor. She was arrested again months later on accusations of violating conditions tied to that earlier case. Investigators are now examining whether that pattern of escalating personal conflict eventually extended beyond close relationships and transformed into something directed at a stranger she had never met, a global celebrity she had become fixated on through social media. The travel detail adds another layer. Ortiz had reportedly made the trip from Florida to California before the shooting, which investigators say suggests planning rather than a spontaneous act. Detectives are working to establish exactly when that trip began, what route she took, and whether there were any other stops or contacts along the way that might explain the full timeline leading up to March 8th. The connection between her online posts and her decision to travel to Los Angeles is confirmed through evidence. It would suggest the attack was not impulsive. It would mean the fixation that had been building online eventually became a plan. And that plan ended with a rifle fired at a family's front gate on a Sunday afternoon. This was not the first time Rihanna had faced a serious security threat at her home. In 2018, a man named Eduardo Leon climbed the fence surrounding her Hollywood Hills property and got inside. He stayed in the house for nearly 12 hours, walking through rooms, charging his phone, and making himself at home, before one of her assistants discovered him. When police questioned him, he said he had entered because he wanted to meet her. He was charged with stalking, burglary, and vandalism, and eventually accepted a deal that placed him on probation and required him to stay away from her. Later that same year, the property was targeted again in a separate incident involving multiple suspects who entered through a rear entrance. Surveillance footage captured them moving through the property before police responded. Rihanna was not home during either of those incidents. The 2026 shooting was different in a way that cannot be understated. The earlier cases involved people trying to get inside to reach her. This case involved someone firing a rifle at the house while she was inside. That is a different category of threat entirely, and it is why attempted murder charges, rather than stalking or trespassing, are at the center of this case. As the legal process moves forward, Ortiz is expected to appear in court where prosecutors will formally present their case. The evidence available to them is significant. The weapon was recovered, shell casings were collected from the scene, surveillance footage from the neighborhood captured the vehicle arriving and leaving, and the social media posts, which documented a months-long fixation culminating in direct accusations against Rihanna, provide investigators with a potential window into intent. If prosecutors can establish that the trip from Florida was connected to those online posts, that the fixation built online eventually drove a real-world decision to travel across the country and fire at the singer's home, the attempted murder charge becomes easier to argue. The bail figure of $10 million suggests prosecutors already believe the evidence is strong enough to keep that charge in place. Rihanna and A$AP Rocky have not made public statements about the incident. People close to the situation have said the focus is on the family and on cooperating with investigators. That silence is standard in cases where ongoing legal proceedings make public commentary complicated, and it reflects a situation where a mother and her children inside a house while someone fired a rifle at it is not something that needs a press release to communicate. The investigation is continuing. More details about Ortiz's background, her travel, and the full extent of her online activity will likely surface as the case moves through the courts. What the evidence already shows is a pattern that started months ago in the form of videos and social media posts, and ended on a Sunday afternoon in Beverly Crest with bullet holes in a gate and a family inside. How do you think platforms should handle situations where someone is posting threatening or obsessive content directed at specific people? And do you think the warning signs in cases like this can be caught earlier? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and stay locked in for the latest updates as this case develops.